Thank you very much. I'm not sure about that point about giving too much away, but I'll do my best. It's great to be here. I think it's probably disappointing for you that the Minister isn't addressing you. He's very enthusiastic about this particular area of work, as you know. And he would have been giving a very impassioned speech. But as Kevin mentioned, lots of other things happening at the moment. Talking about ties, I hedged my bets today and made sure I wasn't allied to any particular direction. Anyway, I am an academician, so it's actually really good for me to be here. I actually came back at the weekend from 4 days in Hamburg, and it's with a group of architects and planners, and we had an absolutely extraordinary good time. So I'm sure you've done Hamburg, but if you haven't, I really recommend that as a place to go to and to visit. Anyway, I'm going to be covering some of the issues that the Minister might have said. It's interesting when we prepare briefing packs for ministers for speeches, they often pay no attention whatsoever and do their own thing, which is great because they embrace it. Sadly, I'm not going to be able to do that. I'm going to have to sort of stick to script a bit. So I'll be talking about the Oxford-Cambridge corridor, and I think the focus of my talk will be a little bit on the work that I'm doing in the ministry, which is the focus on quality. Not my policy area, this particular thing about the Oxford-Cambridge corridor. But it is related very specifically to the work that other officials are doing in the department. A team that's actually focusing on this on two particular themes, which is about how you coordinate government action around the policies, projects, initiatives. How do you coordinate other government departments into the mix of solutions for the corridor? And also how government's ambitions can be fulfilled. So how to unlock long-term opportunities here, how to listen to local voices, and how to help form partnerships. So that particular team is very much part of the work that the ministry is doing. I support the design team, which has been set up. Somebody asked me before whether this is a serious piece of work within government, and my appointment being is it just guff, or is it really serious? And it is serious. There's a design team. I support it. It's coming up with all sorts of initiatives and doing all sorts of things which are very interesting in pushing forward the design agenda, how to embed it into government programs, how we can work across government in different initiatives. My role is to report into Steve Quartermain, who is, of course, the chief planner, who you all know well. My focus is on housing, because that's my background, but clearly that's about place as well. So, learning from Milton Keynes, I'm delighted to be here. I used to spend more time here with my colleague Robert Coles, who's in the audience, I know, and it was a great period of time, and I got to appreciate the city in a big way. Lots of good things about Milton Keynes, a real success story of the post-war new town, a lot about placemaking, about jobs, skills, infrastructure, how to create and build communities, and of course the whole issue about long-term stewardship of place. Design of many new towns often gets criticised. There are, of course, challenges about the pace of development, centralised planning that underpin them. But overall, they have been hugely successful in providing homes and thriving communities. Milton Keynes, of course, having a unique character and today flourishing, lots of innovation, design, focus, and character to build on. So there's a lot to learn from Milton Keynes in terms of the sort of growth that we want across the Arc in the future. A huge area to cover in the Arc, 5 counties, 3.7 million inhabitants. Our ambition, of course, is to deliver up to 1 million homes across the Arc by 2050, and to really build on that economic potential and to ensure that there's prosperity over the long term. Some facts and figures: gross value added of 100 billion per year, probably it is the fastest pace of growth in the last couple of decades compared to the rest of the UK. We know that there are lots of strong aspects in the ARC, which are about science, technology, and high-value manufacturing. But it's patchy, and it needs to be joined together. It's uneven. How it all connects is a major issue. So there's real potential to transform the ARC as a whole into a world-leading economic area, and I think that's the government's overriding objective, is how do you bring economic prosperity across the ARC. Of course, delivering infrastructure is one of the key things, so new transport routes, stations, schools, hospitals, public spaces. Government understands and has been backed up, of course, by the National Infrastructure Commission report, its commitment to the East-West Rail and the expressway being expressed within the report. I think the ministers fully understand that not everyone would agree with exactly the necessary infrastructure, where it should go, what the exact numbers in what areas should be, and where they should go. So there's a lot really to resolve over the next few years. The joint declaration, which was signed by government and local partners in March, recognises that this could include the development and expansion of existing as well as new settlements. But they do want a real focus on design and a much better natural environment to go along with that. So there are some architectural heritages that can be really built on here, and I've sort of highlighted just two or three, just to give the sort of sense in which what you're building on here is a real architectural heritage. Another key plank to this is around sustainability and the recognition, I suppose, over the time of that focus of development. You are in a period of changing climate and weather patterns, land use change, population pressures, and the significant strain on natural assets. So that's why the government has put the environmental sustainability at the heart of its ambitions for the ARC. So England's 25-year environment plan will be a central plank upon which to build that. So it's all about intelligent, sensitive design within context, enhancing habitats, looking at improving connectivity, and ensuring that we improve access to the environment for new communities and to sort of build on the health and well-being. So some real aspirations, but embedded directly in the 25-year plan. I want to talk a little bit about quality. This is my particular area of focus, and I think this particularly relates to the kind of quality that the ARC is expecting to deliver. This is a serious objective by government. Its narrative is now less about just quantity. It's much more about the combination of quantity, quality, and pace of delivery. So you hear more, better, faster expressed by ministers. There is, of course, a challenge of balancing all of that, but at least quality is back in the mix in terms of building better homes. I suppose one of the most, the driving force behind this is expressed in the Housing White Paper, which is about that if you can get the quality right, you'll get more support from local communities for new development. So as our minister says, if you get it right, you'll find that you will be in a rare and wonderful position of residents actually welcoming new development if you get that quality right. And one of my focus is not so much quality of build and quality of planning, but quality of life that you're creating. So all these particular issues are the sort of issues that we're looking to address in the work that we're doing. So community engagement, I mean, I think we're aware that this gets bandied around as a term that often isn't sort of backed up by real actions and meaning. And we've been looking at the techniques, the tools and techniques that are needed to improve the amount of community engagement that occurs. So we've run, for example, a couple of model charrettes, and I know you as an organisation arrange those sort of things, but government has sort of gone out of its way to commission to record the findings of that, and we'll be issuing more information on that. But clearly, how we engage with communities, not just in development and in the sort of the hotel room on a wet Thursday evening to sell something to somebody, but it's how do you get communities really buying into the creation of plans, not just developments. So planning reform, I won't go through all of that. You all know July last year we published the new MPPF, and it has much more emphasis around quality if you read it as a whole. Some particular sections are focused around that, so achieving well-designed places gives you a clear indication of the kind of policy hooks that local authorities can now embrace in their local plans. We're talking about, in the MPPF, also about the tools and techniques that can be used and how policies should ensure that visually attractive and developments can add to the character of existing neighbourhoods. We are, at the moment, producing planning practice guidance, and that will be issued during the summer. That planning practice guidance is design guidance, specifically modifying the current Q&A document, and it embeds a lot of the work that the design team have been doing in terms of determining much better criteria for it. The thing that's going alongside that, which is an innovation, is a illustrated downloadable design manual. We're calling it that for now. We might change its title, but it's just a kicking off in terms of commission with a consultant to help us pull a document together which actually summarises what government actually thinks good design looks like. There's lots of guidance out there, but what are the key things that government actually thinks are important? So we're actually doing that again. That will be coming out a bit after the PPG, but we want to embrace some of the good thinking that's always been there, but has sort of fallen maybe into disuse. You'll notice also reference to Manual for Streets 3. There's a piece of work going on at the moment by Department of Transport, looking at how that can be better used, utilised, and perhaps modified. We are looking also at, within the guidance, about what the planning tools could be, and this is a sort of an area, I suppose, for the ARC to think about, the local authorities in the ARC. How do we get quality charters similar to Cambridge? How do we have those sort of design guides that set the benchmark for everybody to achieve within their area in terms of delivering good design? And how do we ensure that the visions that you might have for an area are bedded into local plans? And of course, then there's the evaluation of that. You'll see from the MPPF, and it will be reinforced within design guidance about the importance of building for life, tools like that, but most significantly, I suppose, from my own point of view, the importance of design review and the importance of using a combination of tools, maybe not just one, but a combination of tools. And of course, Cambridge Design and Conservation Panel is a real example of how you might actually set that up and apply that successfully in the ARC. I do want to say a few words about the Building Better, Building Beautiful Commission. It received a bit of a lukewarm embrace at the beginning by the profession and about built environment experts. But it pulled together some really good thinkers in this particular space, and we made sure that it wasn't dominated by any one particular sort of mindset. And that we got to a point before Sir Roger Scruton was dismissed of actually having agreement within the Commission and the Commission advisors about the nature of what beauty means. So it's not about just what places look like, but it's also about how they function, how they feel, how you integrate into the landscape, the relationship between buildings and public realm. And really the infrastructure of towns and cities is all about the infrastructure that it builds and how landscape it integrates with the landscape. So call for evidence still open if you're enthusiastic. I hope the Academy will be making a submission. It is serious, it is ongoing, and I think you had Nicholas Boys-Smith and Gail Mayhew at one of your events previously. So you'll know from them that they're very keen to come up with some practical recommendations that can be used. I want to say a few words about the government programmes. I think government recognises the importance of learning from the past and taking lessons from garden villages and well-planned, well-designed places. And how do you apply that into a more current context? And of course, the locally led garden communities programme is an expression of that. Lots of appointments have been made, or lots of finances have been committed to a lot of places around the country with 1,500 or more, and sometimes 10,000 or more new homes. The announcement in March of 5 new garden towns is an example of that. So I think the fact that this is a recognised programme now by government, how do you make sure that it's kite-marked in a way that the use of the term garden town or garden village means something and has some outcome that has some meaning? So we're looking at not just what you appoint, what monies you give in the first place, but how do you ensure that the quality outcomes will be delivered. The government announced new town development corporations, of course, which are locally led, which means that it doesn't have Secretary of State approving it. It can be done locally. So lots of interesting things happening there. The Healthy New Towns focus on health and well-being by NHS and PHE are really welcomed, and we're talking earnestly with them at the moment about a piece of work which embeds some of the kite mark thinking into Healthy New Towns. And of course, you've got Gravenhill, Bicester, Garden Town, and Ebbsfleet. And Ebbsfleet are developing, interestingly, a building for health to life kite mark, which is going to be embraced, we believe, by NHS, but it's ongoing discussions at the moment. It's worth mentioning this, the industrial industrial strategy grand challenges, 4 particular challenges on the emerging nature of our society, and that they will apply very significantly to a 2050-year horizon. So how do we take account of AI, mobility, changing car use, and a particular competition initiative which I'm involved in is the Home of 2030, which will be a competition launched, which looks at how do you accommodate clean growth properly within a home by 2030, and how do you accommodate the changing needs of an ageing population? Again, another very significant issue. A word about MMC. Clearly, MMC is government policy. It's embedded in a number of different programmes, and right across government, it's MMC first as a government policy. The danger of conflating and assuming that MMC just delivers quality, you will have local experience of how dangerous that conflation can sometimes be. So there is an issue about making sure that we do get not just the technical quality right, which in itself is an issue, but also how does MMC work with placemaking, good design, locally distinctive development, and so forth. Lots of examples of good design. You know, there isn't any shortage. All these images are of councils doing it for themselves. And actually, there have been real encouragement, I suppose, from the lifting of the HRA cap and enabling local authorities to borrow and to, I suppose, take some of that value of the land and put it into the quality of the development. And one of their initiatives and reasons for doing it is because they don't feel that the quality is being delivered by other agencies. So other agencies include small house builders, small, medium house builders. How do we get more of them into the mix? How do we move away from relying on the big 6 and have a more diverse development? And I suppose the large-scale development plans like Oliver Letwin had set out in his report can actually harness the energy of local builders. And finally, just ingredients for success. I think the Minister, if he was here, would be talking very animatedly about legacy and about the importance of creating something that actually looks to the future. And he often uses the term the conservation areas of the future. And are we really caring about the kind of developments that we're building? Of course, we've done it in the UK. We've done it many times. Derwentthorpe in York is a real example of how we can use all the skills that we have, world-leading skills, to deliver real quality outcomes. And I'll just list down some of the obvious references to some of the design implications, but from not just concept, not just detail, not just planning, but also how they're built, but right through to how they're managed. And that stewardship, I suppose, is fundamental. And Milton Keynes offers a really good example about how that stewardship can work. I've been shown the card, so my time's up, and thank you very much for listening.
John, I think it is.
Your last slide, Andy Derwentthorpe, prompts me to recognise the importance of blue-green infrastructure as being what we require to nurture and nourish good neighbourhoods. In your explanation about the origin of the Ark, it was clearly an economic origin, and hopefully will continue to be economically successful. I'm struck by the potential incoherence across the whole Ark when we come to look at the quality of the environment. Many of the integrating features of it are hard infrastructure like East-West Rail and the expressway. I'll declare an interest. I'm a trustee of something called the Bedford Milton Keynes Waterway Trust, which is proposing to build a very sizable and impactful blue-green element that could be running through a large number of residential neighbourhoods and could feed into the quality of the environment we're trying to achieve throughout. And I'm wondering whether you have any advice or steer as to how we can put blue-green projects like that on a similar footing to the hard concrete infrastructure that is much easier to promote.
I think that's a really good challenge. I was struck when I talked to the Oxford-Cambridge ARC team just how much needs to be thought through in terms of the overall strategic direction of the developments and how many unanswered questions there are. One of the key things that was delivered here at Derwentthorpe was the green and blue infrastructure in early, and actually generated the kind of value that enabled certainty in terms of delivery, the quality of delivery all came through. So, and that's when you go across Europe, you learn that actually putting in that infrastructure early actually enhances value and takes out the sort of the risk or the greater risk of lower values being generated through the value, the risk being taken by developers. So there's something in what you say. I can't give you any answers to it, but I think there is a danger that we think of infrastructure only as movement and not enough about green infrastructure. And green infrastructure is so vital to make great places.
Thanks, Andy. I think we've got two more. One there and one there. And then, yes, first.
Thank you. Good morning. Mike Jones, Bidwells. I just wondered how you could, or how the government is considering the merits of obviously this positive steps in design against the conflict that will arise with changes in permitted development rights, because obviously the two don't necessarily go hand in hand.
Yeah, this keeps coming up. We did a series of roundtables with planning heads of planning and planning committee members around the country, and almost consistently the issue about permitted development rights has been raised. And of course there have been lots of high-profile sort of examples of substandard, poor quality development being delivered. That has been recognised by government, and they are undertaking at the moment a piece of research to review what the quality issues are in particular. There's a lot of evidence of not just bad, but also some quite good ones. So how do we learn from that, and what do we need to do as a consequence of finding out the evidence? So government at the moment is in the process of getting the evidence to know what next steps to take.
Thanks, Andy. And one more.
Hi, Shane Downer, the Heritage Officer for Milton Keynes Council. My question is, how are you trying to persuade developers and house builders to look at the local architectural and heritage character and quality of the localities, rather than them building any housing which could be anything in the country, anywhere in the country? That local character is really important, especially with a new town.
That's my passion. Is, you know, I've operated in London most of my life, and I think London has sort of its own issues, but the bigger issues are around the country. And in terms of how you can be on a train from here to Liverpool and see the same developments in whatever city you pass through, whatever town you pass through. The government is very keen on locally distinctive development and taking account of the local character of an area, and that will be expressed within the design guidance. It's going to be quite difficult to actually sort of be very specific about what that means. I think it's government giving hooks to local authorities to set the bar. So it's not, government can't actually sort of say, you must do this, but it can say to local authorities, you have the power to do this, and it would be upheld by an inspector in the future. So I think the challenge goes back, I think, to local authorities to set the bar for that, but I think government is doing its bit to give you the hooks to go by.
Thanks very much, Andy. Can we thank Andy for, one, setting the scene. He's set the national scene, the policy scene, and I think you've also said, look, this isn't all about ideas and plans and strategies. There's some good work being done out there, and you're reminding us about that and using it as a benchmark. So it's great to have an architect and urbanist at the heart of government arguing for this. So please thank Andy for coming along today.
Thank you.